Hello everyone. I would like to take a few minutes to congratulate the Prime Minister for leading by example, at least in the last few days. I would also like to pay tribute to the Kenyans who have dutifully, faithfully continued to pay taxes over the years in spite of their economic hardship. Also, whereas I must condemn the gang of hooligans in Parliament who refuse to pay their due taxes to the government, I must congratulate honorable members Peter Kenneth and Johnston Muthama who chose to patriotism rather than sycophants. Like I said before, first of all, I must be the first to pat the Prime Minister on the back for the bold initiative of being the first among equals indeed. Now, this patriotic act by the Prime Minister seriously beckons for my vote come 2012. Not that the Prime Minister is guaranteed of my vote, but it will be difficult for me not to vote for him in 2012 going by his latest act of paying his due taxes. Mr. Prime Minister, we're not saluting you because you paid your taxes. No, we are saluting you because you took the offer by the Kenyan Revenue Authority to pay taxes or else face the consequences that were unequivocally stated by the Kenyan Revenue Authority. You chose to respect the KRA as required by law. Should be told, you should have been paying your taxes just like your colleagues, Peter Kenneth and Johnston Muthama. So stop passing the buck that someone at KRA was sleeping on the job. Whereas that might be difficult to convince some of us, you must be reminded that your sleep analogy was as a result of your members of parliament hiding taxes due under your pillows while you slept at night. This is the only time the sleep analogy works, Mr. Prime Minister. However, on the soft side, rather than choose to side with the majority of MPs who are refusing to pay their share of taxes, you sided with the minority, Peter Kenneth and Johnston Muthama. In so doing, you, Mr. Prime Minister, sided with the majority of Kenyans. Unfortunately, the Vice President, Mr. Kalonzo Musyoka, has been caught once again sitting on the fence, as has been characterized by most of his political life. Never mind the fact that you, Mr. Kalonzo Musyoka, is one of the most boring politicians this country has ever produced since independence, in the true sense of the word boredom. Mr. Kalonzo Musyoka, you chose to side with the majority of MPs who are fighting tooth and nail to suspend payment taxes or dismiss the payment altogether thereof. The consequence of this bold act by the Prime Minister, unfortunately, it outweighs you, Mr. Kalonzo Musyoka, the likes of the Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta and Musalia Mudavadi too included. They are all in this bandwagon of running for the presidency of the Republic of Kenya. Indeed, when they look at their competitors, the Prime Minister scores political prowess and strategy. Now, no wonder these competitors, they're running for cover once again. Because when they see the Prime Minister's political strategy, they see the political eulogy and graveyard not far inside. It is for this reason perhaps why the Vice President says that the Prime Minister did this for show rather than for compliance. Now, we choose to disagree with you, Mr. Vice President. We all understand your pretense. You know what you are up against as well. You know too well that when it comes to political strategy, the Prime Minister will whip your poor behind every single time. Whether what the Prime Minister did was for show or not, he expedited political prudence way above and over you. Now the Prime Minister can walk his head and shoulders high, while you, Mr. Vice President, very low indeed. You are praying that come election day 2012, the votes will come down from heaven and fill your ballot boxes to beat the Prime Minister in your race to status. Just like Manna came down for the Israelites in the desert. I got news for you, Mr. Vice President. As sure as the night follows the day, come election night 2012, the best you will do is follow the Prime Minister when votes will be tallied. We are not challenging your right to run for the presidency. We are simply questioning the wisdom behind the candidates for president. Now, to the Kenyan National Assembly, otherwise known as the Kenyan Parliament. This is one of the most uncouth, selfish, confused and confusing national assemblies that there is in the world today. It is led by a buffoon called Kenneth Marende. This self-aggrandizing speaker thinks that democracy is only democracy and should be embraced only when opposing PNU agenda in Parliament. His lack of leadership has only helped to slow down the full realization of the newly passed constitution in the country. Mr. Kenneth Marende is not alone. He is surrounded by a gang of political goons whose only common purpose is protecting their allowances while the rest of Kenyans rot in poverty. Recently, they opposed the president's nomination of an attorney general, a chief justice, and the director of public prosecutions. They said it was unconstitutional, while they made it very loud and clear that the constitution should be obeyed to the letter by all Kenyans, irrespective of societal status, members of parliament included. For once, they stole the thunder from the unsuspecting public by pretending that theirs was for constitutionalism and the rule of law. Very little water indeed would pass under the bridge before this reinvention could be put to test. What a turn of events when it came to paying tax on their allowances. When the Commissioner for Domestic Taxes, Mr. John Injiraini, knocked on their door to remind them of their constitutional requirement that they pay tax, they declared war on the poor taxman. One of the local newspapers described the members of parliament as being furious for being asked to obey the constitution. They claimed that Mr. Injiraini was uncivilized in reminding them the consequences of not paying them the taxes that they owe. They don't want to pay taxes like other poor Kenyans do. It is shocking to hear what Mr. Walter Nyambati, the Vice Chairman of Parliamentary Service Commission, suggests as a solution to their criminal and unpatriotic activity. That the KRA should have waited for them to respond. Wait? For how long? Wait? While the inflation the inflation rate on consumer prices in Kenya is over 4.2%. Poor Kenyans are not waiting on prices of commodities. If they can't afford to buy basic cornmeal to cook ugali, they sleep hungry. They don't wait. Then there is this buffoon from Kisumu West constituency, Mr. Olago Oluoch, who only thinks that this is the time to follow the old constitution and not the new one to safeguard the allowances. He denied the president from using the old constitution in appointing the officers, but he thinks and suggests it should be used this time around to protect his allowance. Such has been the hypocrisy of this Kenyan parliament. They set standards for the poor Kenyans that they cannot meet themselves. They have failed to meet the barest minimum standard of their own rules. We cannot imagine a higher order of hypocrisy than this. Shame on you, Kenyan Parliament. Now to the rest of the Kenyan people, you must demand that your member of Parliament take side on this matter. Either they are for paying every penny of what they owe to the Kenyan Revenue Authority or they are not. There should be no two ways about this matter. They must make a clear fundamental stand. For all those MPs who hold the view that they should not pay taxes on their allowances, they must not be allowed to see the inside of Parliament again. They can go to church and ask for forgiveness. There will be forgiveness. But as for the rest of the Kenyans, They must not be allowed to go back to Parliament. We will continue to put the pressure on them. Everybody has to pay taxes, the Vice President included, all members of Parliament included. We'll be watching this space again. Take care.